Duke looked awfully vulnerable against Florida State, down two starters, and now a door is open for someone else to potentially take the top seed on Selection Sunday.
Welcome in to Locked On College Basketball Squad Show, your go-to spot for everything happening on the hardwood, from blue blood battles to bracket busters and everything in between. Join the squad of hoops junkies as we break down the biggest stories with the boldest takes and unfiltered opinions. Because here, we don't hold back. It's the College Basketball Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Happy Friday. It is the final weekday before we have an actual bracket in our hands, folks. Welcome in to the Locked On College Basketball Squad Show. I am your host, Andy Patton, also host of Locked On Zags and Locked On College Basketball. Joined today by my co-hosts on Locked On College Basketball, Isaac Shade, as well as Nick Arvin of Locked On Purdue and JJ Jackson of Locked On Blue Devils. I want to thank all of you for making this show your first listen or first watch of the day. And of course, give a special shout out to those everyday listeners. We're all here on the Locked On Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, folks. FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com now to get started. Well, Duke looked a little bit vulnerable. They are locked in as a #1 seed, but it wasn't their best showing against Florida State. We're going to talk about how we think they're going to do going forward in the ACC tournament, what it might mean for them in the NCAA tournament as well. Also, are they the most vulnerable among the #1 seeds? We'll have that conversation, and then we'll take a look at seeds 2 through 4. Everybody else kind of competing for a top 16 spot as Selection Sunday is about 48 hours away. Talk about some potential dark horse teams that probably aren't going to be top 4 seeds, but that might make a deep run in March. And then we got to close out the show talking about what has been one of the biggest storylines in college basketball over the last week or so. The bubble is incredibly weak this year. Those teams, it feels like they're not even trying to win anymore. So many losses by teams vying for a final spot in the tournament. Will we get some potential bid thieves that could save us from having to put some of these teams in the big dance? We'll get to that to close out the show. But JJ, let's start with the Duke of it all. We saw a tight game against Florida State. And look, this Florida State team has been playing pretty well as of late. And as JJ, as you know, they played, even when they weren't playing well, they played Duke very close way back in early January. Seemed like a matchup that might be tough, even fully healthy, but without Pat Ngongba and without Caleb Foster, they were a Rodney McRae hero ball shot away from potentially losing that game to Florida State. How are you feeling, especially coming into tonight's game against Clemson?
Yeah, a whirlwind of emotions as last night's game was playing out. You know, thinking about the first meeting that Duke had against Florida State, 87 points scored by Florida State in that matchup was the most points anybody had scored against Duke all season long. You're getting set for tip-off. The line is at 16.5, which just felt so steep given Duke missing 2 starters. Made no sense in my head. And obviously, Duke's got some things to figure out with no Caleb Foster and Patrick Ngongba II in the mix right now. Hopeful that Ngongba will be good to go by the time next week's NCAA tournament opens up. But then, you know, credit to Florida State for playing as advertised, as they've been 10-2 over their last 12 ACC games now, and had big-time shot makers. I thought, as you said, Robert McRae V was outstanding. LeJay Jones could not miss from the outside in the corner. I mean, they have got some big-time shot makers, but fortunately Duke, like they've done so much of the season, really won this game on the glass. Malik Brown's effort was incredible. Cameron Boozer did his thing. Isaiah Evans back in his hometown of Charlotte with a career-high 32 points. So it helps that when you're down 2 starters, you still have one of the most talented rosters in the entire sport to be able to pull through like that, and just really strong and great coaching by Jon Scheyer. As he said, an 8-point second-half lead, guys, is something Duke really hasn't experienced this entire season. I mean, that was an unbelievable feeling. You couldn't believe what your eyes were telling you when that scoreboard read an 8-point deficit for Duke, and then they rattle off a 19-2 run and kind of put the game away.
JJ, what I've been trying to figure out is, like, I mean, it feels, I know the verbiage out there is like with Foster, with Caleb, that it's like, hey, he's out kind of for the time. Like, it feels like indefinite language, but it's like, I don't see a world how you get back. Like, even if we get all the way to the Final Four, like, there's no way you recover from a fractured foot to play at a Final Four capacity. Am I missing something there, or is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just like 3 weeks away, right?
Yeah.
It's a fractured foot. And, if anybody right now took a moment to go to Google, or I guess everything's now Chat GPT.
All right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that.
And ask the typical timeline for a foot fracture. You're going to be met with 6 to 8 weeks instantly by the search engines, right? And so I don't know how 3 weeks all of a sudden becomes possible. So, I mean, never say never, I guess. I just don't know that that's going to be the smartest of moves. And if you come back in 3 weeks, you're certainly not the player that you were prior to the injury taking place. And so, yeah, I think Duke's got to figure this out. Caden Boozer's got to grow up really quickly as the guy. And then they had a lot of Point Hemenia looks. And Andy, every week I'm talking to you, somehow, some way, Nick Hemenya's name is being mentioned. And here we are. He's really a part of the fold and had a great game yesterday. So, I do not see a world that Caleb Foster's back this season.
Are you optimistic about Pat, though? Like about getting him back for the tournament?
I know a lot of people are, he didn't have the little scooter thing last week.
Which is the
North
coolest
Carolina
contraption
game.
in the world, man.
It really is. And that's my thought process, Isaac, is that Caleb Foster, fresh off of surgery, needs to be riding the scooter. So I think Patrick Ngongba was just a little jealous. He's like, well, if you guys want me in this protective boot, then I want to be able to roll around on a scooter as well. And so didn't want Caleb to be out on an island by himself. But right now, with everything they've said and the fact that Ngongba did go through pregame warmups against North Carolina and tried to give it a go in the regular season finale, I don't see why Duke wouldn't be in a position to have him come back next week.
For me, like one of the things that's been interesting this year is part of a larger conversation going back to the Caleb Foster timeline is like coaches, for the most part, don't really have to be super revealing about injury status and update and things like that. I know some conferences have started having these.
Which the ACC
reports.
Does.
The ACC does have that. And I think that's part of it. But like when the NCAA tournament, when the selection committee has made it clear, and this is justified, but they say like we take into account injuries. And if you're not going to have certain players, that impacts your seeding. Why would any coach voluntarily give you any information that is negative? And I'll say this from a Gonzaga perspective. Braden Huff has been out since January 8th, and he was given a 4 to 8 week timeline. 8 weeks was basically exactly selection Sunday from that timeline. And then a month later, he had made, according to like what we saw, he was still on crutches. He's not putting any weight on his knee. It didn't look like he'd made any progress. And Mark Few said, oh, it's still, it's the tail end of that timeline. They have refused to indicate anything saying that he won't play in the NCAA tournament, even though he doesn't look particularly close. And yesterday was finally a report that he is doubtful for the first 2 round games. They're still not committing.
We're not seeing him.
He's not like, I'd be stunned.
Dang.
I'd be stunned if he played. He has, according to a few, he's shooting a little bit and he's jogging a little bit. And I'm like, the odds of him, like, even if he doesn't have a setback from here on out, like he's not going to be running full speed enough to get out and play 20 minutes a game. Like there's just no way. And with Foster, like there's no way. Like, but I wouldn't, if I don't have to, I'm not going to give you any information that might hurt where my team. And obviously Duke's going to be a 1 seed regardless, but like Gonzaga's between a 3 and a 4. And that's a huge difference in terms of getting to the Sweet 16 or getting to the Elite 8, because Gonzaga can beat the 2 seeds. I don't know if they can beat the 1 seed. So you want to be that 3 seed desperately. And I'm not giving up any information that might hurt that. So it's just kind of a weird wrinkle. Like we've seen, these aren't the only 2 teams that have done that, but we've certainly seen teams that are trying really hard to kind of protect some of that information before Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I kind of made the same conversation a little bit earlier in the weekend. There's no advantage for these coaches to be that forthcoming with injuries if they are going to be judged when a committee gets together. And I know a lot of people, it's not basketball, but the football comparison is what we saw in the final year of the 4-team college football playoff. Florida State goes undefeated, but their quarterback, Jordan Travis, is out, and then they're left out of the 4-team field because they're factoring in injuries that are there. So to this point, zero reason why Duke needs. There's no incentive for these teams to do those things.
JJ, do you think, like, obviously Caden is a really good point guard. Like when he's on the bench, like I feel like with Cam, like, do you just let Cam run point forward and just live with that?
Yeah, I personally do. There
I
was a
love
lot
that.
of
I love that
yeah,
move, man.
there was a lot of Hemenia in the game
Mhm.
against Florida State, and I'm sure that we're still going to see a good bit of him as Duke continues throughout this weekend in the ACC tournament if they can get past Clemson and then on into the championship game. But I think they're just as good with Cam Boozer out there on the floor handling the rock and kind of getting Duke where they want to go and that sort of thing. It is so tough to defend Duke when Isaiah Evans is the screener and Cam
Sheesh,
Boozer
dude.
has the basketball.
Yeah.
Because who are you going to guard here? And that's what Duke runs over and over and over
Well,
again.
that's the action I want. I want the ball in the hands of my two best players. It's like last year when you get Cooper and Con going, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's make that happen. Man, crazy stuff.
Shire's a pretty good coach. That's what I'm
he
picking
knows
up
what
on.
he's
You know,
doing. He knows what he's doing. By the way, Andy, speaking about knocking off one seeds in real time right now, Ohio State has just tied Michigan with 16 and a half to go in the Big Ten quarterfinals.
Yeah, and we're also obviously it's really early in this game, but Florida has jumped out to a 14-6 lead over Kentucky in the SEC, and that kind of leads into looking at the rest of these one seeds here. Obviously, you have Arizona, Michigan, Duke. They're basically locks to be one seeds. I don't see any reality where none of those teams or any of those teams don't make it. That final one seed spot's going to be between Florida and UConn, most likely. At maybe Houston can kind of sneak in there at some point, but I kind of want thoughts on you guys. Obviously, Duke being injured right now is a key factor, but which of these one seeds is most vulnerable? And we saw all 4 one seeds in the Final Four last year. If you knew that 3 of the 4 were going to make it this year, or 2 of the 4, or whatever, like which ones do you think are most likely to potentially get knocked off a little early?
Well, we talk about Duke having injuries, and that's certainly a factor, but this is still a Duke team that just a few weeks ago beat Michigan.
Yep.
And a Michigan team that's played great basketball all year long, went to Mackey Arena earlier that week and beat my Boilermakers. So all season long, I felt like Michigan is that one team that isn't going to be the one that gets beat. But ever since LJ Kaysen got injured, and he's way more important than anybody would give him credit to. Elliot Cadeau, a great point guard for Michigan, but they don't necessarily have that depth anymore in their backcourt that they did at one point, where Dusty May could just throw anything at you and find some success. So right now, I'm a little bit concerned about the Wolverines. Once again, that is a team that I thought would be the best one seed for a good portion of this year. I would also throw Florida in there if only 2 of the 4 were to make it. I'd probably say an Arizona and a Duke right now, depending on the Blue Devils injuries, how all that plays out. But I don't think that Florida has played the strength of schedule that an Arizona, a Duke, or even a Michigan has to this point. The conference tournament's going to be big for Florida, in my opinion, in terms of can they rack up some more quad one wins? Can they prove that they are the team to beat coming out of the SEC? Right now, it looks like they are, and it's hard to doubt a team, especially after the run they went on last year with Todd Golden at the helm. But who knows? They have a good front court. Xavier Lee's looked a lot better since he did start out this season. There are a lot of moving pieces, but right now I would actually say that Michigan is on the outs.
I'd push back on the strength of schedule side of it, Nick, just a little bit. At Ken Palm, at least, Florida is 6th in the nation in strength of schedule. So that just to keep that in mind. But I think one of the things for me with Andy answering your question is looking at these injuries, right? Obviously, we've talked about the Duke. Nick just very wisely brought up the LJ Kaysen. I'm one of those that undervalued how big a deal that would be when Elliot Cadeau goes to the bench. And then for Arizona, I think the big thing is how healthy can Koa Pete get? Because that's a key cog for them with having him at the 4 there, healthy and ready to go. It seems like he's back in good working order. But man, that's critical. And that's the nice thing for Florida is they don't seem to have that. They've got an Achilles heel, obviously, with their 3-point shooting. So I think it's going to be all down to injuries. Like assuming, as JJ was talking about, I don't think we're going to see Caleb Foster again. I fully expect this time next week to see Pat Ngongba out on the floor. At what percentage of himself? If he's 85%, I'd say Blue Devils are in great shape as long as Caden can step up like I think he can. The problem is, it was funny. We're talking about Elliot Cadeau. A lot of teams just play off of him and let him shoot. We saw Florida State do that to Caden Boozer.
Boy, did they
on Thursday night. And so the coaching staff's going to have to scheme something there, because I think that's a bit of a blueprint that teams are going to utilize in the postseason. I still am of the firm belief that Arizona is the most complete team of these one seeds, especially understanding the injuries that are at play. And so to me, they're the least vulnerable. And I would say most vulnerable right now. I mean, if without Foster and without Ngongba, I'd have a hard time not saying Duke. And I hate to say that, but I think that's where it's at for me.
Are we getting enough? I was going to say, Isaac, are we getting enough Carlos Boozer cutaways within game action now that it's like Caden's got a much larger role? And
Right.
then being in the building for these ACC tournaments, he's definitely worth watching. And the only thing I've seen in the online commentary is, oh my goodness, how many times do we have to see this father react to one of his sons? That's the problem. He's got two on one team. So the chances of one of them making a big play is increased, man.
One thing that stands out to me about this group of teams that's just kind of is probably coincidental more than anything else, but one of the kind of separators for me is always looking at which teams have veteran guards, experienced guards, specifically like primary initiators, ball handlers. Obviously, Arizona with Jaden Bradley, I think probably is your advantage there. But all of these teams kind of lack strong 3-point shooting point guards. Like obviously Isaiah Evans is a good shooter, like that Braden Burries is a good shooter. Like there's good shooting guards on these teams, but Bradley's not a great 3-point shooter. Boozer's not a great 3-point shooter. Elliot Cadeau is an inconsistent 3-point shooter. Let's put it that way. Obviously, there's much has been made about Florida's outside shooting from their guards. So it's like every 1 seed you can go under on those screens and dare them to shoot. It's just kind of a unique thing. I don't think that there's anything related about that necessarily. These teams all have phenomenal front courts, and that really helps a lot. But certainly going to be something interesting to see kind of how the guard play, specifically the point guard play, kind of impacts all 4 of these teams. I would lean Bradley being the most impactful out of this group, and that being part of the reason that, I think Arizona's maybe the more complete team, but without their starting point guard, Duke certainly feels vulnerable. Florida, the inconsistency of their guards definitely scares me as well.
Also, we're still this Ohio State Michigan game is still stuck at 44 all, and it has been since 17-22, and right now it's at 14-40, and still nobody has scored. So we're in like a
Elliot Cadeau just scored. Elliot Cadeau
just got to the rack. All right, finally, I jinxed it into happening. Way to go, Isaac. You're the man.
Well, we're going to talk 2 through 4 seeds here. Moving on from the 1 seed conversation, taking a look at who's fighting for those top 16 spots, who's fighting to potentially get a chance to play these teams in these Elite 8, Sweet 16, and maybe some teams outside that conversation who might make a deep run this year. All that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, college basketball is nonstop, especially this time of year. We got big games, we got tight spreads, we got momentum swings every single night. We just talked to JJ about that. From the early tip-offs that are going on right now to late night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And right now, FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with the college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay that you want. There's rivalry games, there's ranked matchups, whatever fits your read on the games, and you can mix your spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. And then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Right now, looking at the ACC tournament, Duke's still favored -250 to win that tournament. Virginia's next at +380. We'll talk about them in a second. And then Miami, Jay Lucas and the Canes at +850. So you can go safe. You can take Duke. You can go bold. Take the Canes. You can ride with the team you've been following all season long. It's your parlay, your style, and now with more upside behind it. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Coast. Folks, CoastPay is giving Locked On listeners up to $2,000 credit for your business when you get started today. If you manage a crew, maybe construction, HVAC, landscaping, any operation that has trucks on the road, you already know how messy gas and material spending can get. Cards get shared, receipts disappear, and month end turns into a headache. CoastPay fixes all of that. CoastPay is the modern fuel card and expense management tool built specifically for fleets. Fuel, maintenance, materials, all on one card with real control and instant visibility. Every transaction shows up the moment it happens. There's no surprises. If somebody fuels up at an odd time or tries to buy something outside their limit, you'll know instantly. Works anywhere Visa is accepted. There's no detours to specific stations, and it's built for operators who don't have time to chase paperwork. And unlike those old fuel cards, there are no contracts or commitments, just smarter expense control. Right now, CoastPay is offering our listeners up to $2,000 credit when you get started at coastpay.com/lockedoncollege. Go to coastpay.com/lockedoncollege to see how you can earn up to $2,000 in credit. Terms apply. All right, folks, want to thank all of you for making Locked On College Basketball Squad Show your first listen or watch of the day. And again, thank you to help make Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network. Well, we talked about the 1 seeds, Duke, Arizona, Michigan, Florida, likely that 4th and final 1 seed, although they still are not a lock to be in that position, although they are up just 5 right now on Kentucky. Certainly that game will have an impact in that conversation, but lots of movement still going on between those 2, 3, and 4 seeds. It feels like every game that happens kind of moves the needle significantly. As somebody following a team that's done right now and just sitting here patiently waiting for Gonzaga, they'd love to know what's going to happen with Nick Arvin's Purdue team and Nebraska and Virginia and all these teams rooting heavily against a lot of them right now to see if we can secure that 3 seed. Right now, according to Bracket Matrix, the way that this is shaken out, your 2 seeds, UConn, Houston, Illinois, Michigan State. Your 3 seeds, Iowa State, Nebraska, Gonzaga, and Purdue. Your 4 seeds, Alabama, Virginia, Kansas, and Texas Tech. That feels pretty good to me. Obviously, we got Purdue, Nebraska, 2 3 seeds squaring off against each other. We got Kansas and Houston squaring off later, like a lot of movement potentially happening. But do you guys feel like that feels about right in terms of what we're going to see from these top 4 seeds when Selection Sunday gets here?
Where did Bracket Matrix have Iowa State at, Andy? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
The first 3 seed.
The first 3 seed?
Mm-hmm.
That's fair. Do you guys have a bracketologist that you guys prefer compared to another one? Because I hear
honestly, I use Bracket Matrix most of the time.
Yeah, same. Yeah, because it aggregates all of it so well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. I need to get on that. But Iowa State is a team that I love to look at, a team that I'm really interested in right now, and one that I've been huge on for a good portion of the season. They Bracket Matrix has them as a top 3 seed. I think they could get to that 2 line, depending on how the rest of their Big 12 conference.
You beat Arizona tonight. You've probably done it.
Yeah,
for sure. So I'm really high on Iowa State. I can't wait to see how that one plays out. I'm really big on the Big 12 in general this year. I love that conference, Arizona, Iowa State. I'm not as high on Texas Tech after JT Toppin goes out. Obviously, they've taken a bit of a step back. But what's your guys' opinion on this court debacle where really get off topic, but they peel the LED floor and then put the hardwood back in?
Yeah, Isaac and I were talking last night. We went live at like 11:30 p.m. Pacific time or whatever, and I was like, I think Brett Yormark's out there still peeling the court off right now as we speak. I don't mind trying something, but it was an odd time to try it. Like, why try to do something kind of flashy? Do that at the beginning of the season. Like, don't do that at this time of year when there's a potential risk of it. Point. Yeah, like that was what stood out to me. I didn't particularly like the court, but I don't hate trying it. Like I'm never gonna fault a commissioner or somebody for trying something new and innovative and unique, even if I don't particularly like it. My big quibble with this was the specific timing, and then going back and forth on it. It just kind of it brought more negative attention to it than obviously they would have wanted to, and I think that was justified for trying to do this in the tournament.
Like, I think the timing is the best thing, because you're right. The basketball this time of year. The basketball's always going to take care of itself.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to be just as engaged in the game that's being played, because everyone understands the season's up for the lines and that sort of thing. I don't need to be distracted by some court makeup of it all.
Sorry, didn't mean
like Andy, to your point, it's like, do this at Players Era Festival, right?
Right.
Hello. Yep. You're in Las Vegas. You're staring at the Sphere. Let's have a crazy court. Like that's where you do that.
I did want to talk about Purdue. I didn't mean to go out on the tangent, but I had to ask the professionals about the LED court debacle. In terms of Purdue, though, slotted right now at a 3 seed, I don't necessarily know if that changes unless they go on to win the Big Ten tournament. I think right now, outside of going on that run, they'll be a 3 seed either way. If they lose to Nebraska tonight, if they beat Nebraska, beat a Michigan State or something like that, though, that in stretch where you lose to Michigan State, you lose to Wisconsin, and then you lose to Ohio State on the road, I think that was just too much for Purdue to get back into that 2 seed line. So I think we'll be right there. But you mentioned something earlier, Andy, when you talked about Gonzaga, something that really stuck out to me in terms of our own situation, where I don't necessarily have confidence in Purdue to beat the 1 seeds. I do think that Purdue could beat the 2 seeds. So if we're able to stay in that 3 line, which I do think we're capable of, there's a real shot that this team gets back to an Elite 8.
Yeah, I think the difference between a 3 and a 4 seed this year is about as significant as it's ever been, not just because of how
100%.
good the 1 seeds are, but because it feels like the difference between the second 2 seed, because I think there's 5 very good teams outside of like the top 4 seeds in UConn. Basically, the difference between 5 and like 14 basically feels really, really close. So if you're a 3 seed, you should feel confident beating a 2 seed, because I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between those
Yeah.
2 seeds. There's some bad matchups for certain teams, but for the most part, like, I think Gonzaga is capable of beating every 2 seed. Not that they will, but they're capable. Whereas with the 1 seeds, I mean, if UConn sneaks in as a 1 seed, I think Gonzaga could beat them. But like, for the most part, they're not matching up well with any of those other teams. So yeah, you really want to be a 3 seed this year. You do not want to be a 4 seed.
What's interesting to me, going back to all this, who's 2 through 4, is like we've got a whole chunk of Big Ten schools mixed in there on those 2-3 lines. Illinois, Michigan State, both 2 seeds right now at Bracket Matrix. Nebraska, Purdue, both 3 seeds. What's interesting is it's one of those things where it's like, are you playing yourself into, by the way, Kentucky's on a 10-0 run and has tied Florida at 20, 9:20 to go first half. So it's like when those teams are playing like Purdue, Nebraska tonight, I don't know that that's necessarily it's like, I don't know that it moves the needle much either way. Like, I don't know that you jump up if you win. I don't know that you fall off if you lose. I think what might move the needle, let's say Virginia somehow,
that's where I was going to go.
Beats Miami and then gets ahead of Duke. Although Duke just absolutely. JJ, how many was that by at Cameron the other week?
Too many.
You remember? Too many, yeah.
26 or something like that.
Let's say that Virginia wins the ACC tournament. I would think they would probably leap, maybe a Purdue, push Purdue down to the 4 and themselves grab a 3.
Yeah,
so I don't think we're going to see
I think is the problem.
Say it again.
They're leaping me. I'm not rooting for Virginia right now.
Right, exactly. But I just say that to say that's one of the only places where I see there being that level of movement amongst those like 2, 3, 4s is if we have one of those teams popping and winning a conference tournament, because so many of them are playing each other and the resumes already have so many data points. I think that we're just, if there is movement, it'll be minimal at that point, because the teams on the 5 line right now, we're looking at like a Vandy, an Arkansas, a St. John's, North Carolina, Tennessee, Wisconsin. And so, I mean, maybe the Johnnies knock off UConn and they could get to a 4. I just don't I don't see Vandy getting to a 4. Arkansas, maybe they get to the SEC championship and they could slide. I just don't see too much movement.
One thing that stands out to me too, for some of the lower seeds that won in their conference tournament, it actually hurts those top seeded teams like Arkansas or Alabama is playing Ole Miss, right? Like that you lose that game, you fall out of the 4 seed conversation. Most likely you win that game, nothing happens. This is sort of what happened to Purdue in the sense of like, Northwestern was not a win that really moved the needle for them. It would have been a catastrophic loss, and they obviously made sure that did not happen. But
they played dang good too.
Yeah, right. It can kind of hurt these teams a little bit when they don't get a chance to pick up like what would have been a marquee tournament win. And Arkansas is in a similar position where they'll play, I believe, Oklahoma. Yeah, they'll play Oklahoma. And so like they don't get that's beating Oklahoma is not going to move Arkansas onto the 4 line. Now, if they then beat Alabama, they might flip with them, and that would help. Certainly, I think Arkansas, in my mind, is probably the most likely team that's not in the top 4 seeds right now, at least according to Bracket Matrix, that could end up getting a top 4 seed. But I think they are hurt by that. Like if they were going to play A&M and beat A&M instead of Oklahoma, that would have helped them a little bit more. Not a huge difference between those teams, but I do think that sometimes the conference tournament and who you're playing is outside of your control, and it can hurt teams in the seeding perspective right now.
I wanted to make sure that I jumped on with Isaac and gave some love to Virginia just with what I've seen here lately. I mean, it's a team that's ranked 10th in the AP poll, and to find themselves kind of in the 4 seed range, the math's not adding up that you would fall that far. I know it's a different look there. And Andy, obviously we're not wanting Virginia to jump Gonzaga for your perspective and that sort of thing. But when you just look, Testa Ritter has led them all season when they're able to swap in and out Grunlow and Onyoso on the interior. Onyoso with 8 blocks yesterday, which was just insane. And then what I love, like some of their guards, Chance Mallory is as tough as they come for a freshman. Right. And one of my favorite parts is that they proudly list him at 5'10". So often in college basketball, we want to give these guys the benefit of the doubt. And Virginia's like, nope, this is our freshman. He's great. He's also 5'10". Like we're not giving him the bump up to 6 feet. So shout out to Virginia.
My favorite thing, this is very off topic, but I'm going to say it anyway. My favorite thing that has happened with the automatic strike zone in Major League Baseball is all the players have to get their height measured specifically, so their strike zone is custom to them. And there's like a huge list of players that went from 6'1" to 5'10" like overnight on the website, and somebody was tracking it. Like it's like there's like
how tall is what's Altuve listed at?
I think I think they haven't been able to fudge his, because if you listed him at 6 foot, everybody would immediately know that you.
Yeah, he's a short king. Hey, by the way, really quick, under 2 to go in the A10. George Washington has retaken the lead over St. Louis, 79-78. Billikens were up 9 just a couple minutes ago, but man, G-Dub getting in it. We'll keep you up to date.
Before we move on to the bubble talk, I'm just going to get one team from each of you who is not in the top 4 seeds right now, according to Bracket Matrix, who you think has a chance of making a Final Four run. I'll toss to you, Isaac, first. Which team do you think that's not in that conversation could do it?
Outside the top 4 seeds at Bracket Matrix?
Mm-hmm. I can rattle off for you if you want.
No, I'm looking at it right now. I'm vacillating between Arkansas, St. John's. I'm going to go with Arkansas because of the Darius Acuff of it all, right? Like, how often do we talk about March being all about crazy good guard play? The question
he's the guy. Yeah.
Right? Like, he is the dude. The question is always, though, he is a freshman, and we just never know how they're going to show up. But he's just shown up again and again and again. They've got some experience. Again, we doubt their front court a little bit. Although, man, I feel like Trayvon Brazile has been playing really well lately. You got Malik Thomas as well. And so I'd say Arkansas, just because I think that, gosh, Acuff could, in a world where we know all of the litany of John Calipari guards through the years, dude, I cannot wait to see, like, we need to do this at some point this offseason, is rank John Calipari freshman guards all time. And I'm guaranteeing you he's going to be at or near the top of that list.
Yep.
I got Wisconsin, Andy. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Nick.
I got Wisconsin as a 6 seed right now on Bracket Matrix. Not only do you have Nick Boyd, not only do you have John Blackwell, who have been balling out lately, but they haven't even had Nolan Winter in their starting lineup the past couple of weeks, which is a big piece for them. They already beat Illinois once this year. They already beat Michigan State once this year. They beat Purdue. I think they beat Michigan too, as well, I believe. Yeah. So they've been everyone that the Big Ten has to offer. I think they're going to beat Illinois once again here in about an hour. I really like this Wisconsin team right now. They have the offense. They can win high scoring games. They're really good in the clutch. I'm really high on Wisconsin as a 6 seed.
Yeah, I will stay on the boat with Isaac there in Arkansas and what Darius Acuff has been. But I also want to jump into the 6 seed conversation that Nick was just having and throw out somebody like Louisville or BYU, simply because for Louisville, if you get Michael Brown Jr. back, and then when we're talking about AJ DeBanza, who's one of the top players in the entire sport, give me the best players when it comes down to a 1-game scenario to take it over for a possibility of making a big run.
I like that. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, my list has Arkansas, BYU on it, so I'm glad that you guys mentioned those teams. I figured they would get some love. I'll throw out Tennessee again. One thing I always look at is veteran guard Jacoby Gillespie. Is that for the Vols? It would be pretty funny if not a weak Rick Barnes team, but certainly not the caliber of Rick Barnes team we've seen the last few years.
Because they don't have like that offensive dude, right? There's not the connect.
I mean, that's where Nate Ament has kind of been. Like, he's not Dalton Connect, he's not Chaz Lanier, he's not a go-to guard, but like he's been that guy for them offensively as of late. I just think it'd be funny if this is the Rick Barnes team that finally makes the Final Four, because they're just not like, again, they're good. They've been fairly consistently in the top 25, but it's certainly not the team people would have expected. My dark horse, and Isaac will probably know what team I'm going to say here, because I've been a fan of them, and I picked them to win the ACC tournament on yesterday's show of Locked On College Basketball, or today's show, Miami. Jay Lucas has done such an incredible job in his first year as the head coach for this program. Malik Reneau is an absolute dude. And even beyond that, Shelton Henderson has been great. Trey Donaldson, Ernest Uday, like, they just have a balanced, consistent team. Yeah. They're kind of projected 7 seed-ish range right now. If they beat Virginia, I think they climb into that 6 seed conversation. If they pull off a stunner over Duke, which I'm still mad we didn't get that game in the regular season, then I could see Miami climbing all the way into the
Saturday night.
Yeah, they could climb maybe 5 seed conversation, maybe, probably still 6, but either way, they're a team that I think is going to be a little dangerous in March. Well, let's talk a little bit, since speaking of the other Miami, we're going to talk about the bubble. We're going to talk about what's going on with the bubble, some bid thief situations, whether the MAC will be a bid thief situation if we think Miami, Ohio is going to get an at-large bid, and whether we're going to be saved from some of these sub 500 conference teams making it into the big dance. We're going to get to all that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, workplace chaos, deadlines that are stacking up, inbox overflowing, and one position that you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, that's a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for with the right skills, experience, and location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. It's less stress, it takes less time, and you get more results. So when you need the right person to cut through the chaos, that's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? That's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Folks, welcome into the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which ones might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take the top spot. 5-Hour Energy has a flavor for everyone, and they give you a boost with 0 added sugar. I've always been a fan of Blue Raspberry. It's a sweet and tangy flavor with a taste that nature couldn't make, but it probably should have. I'd pick the bold Blue Raspberry flavor and sweet finish #1 in my draft, but my sleeper pick is their new Confetti Craze. It's a blend of rich and buttery confetti cake, vanilla frosting, and a sprinkle of sweetness. And you can't ignore the Hawaiian Breeze. It's made with passion fruit, orange, and guava flavors, making it sweet yet smooth and tangy yet tart. Find your new favorite flavor of 5-Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. All right, folks, continuing our conversation as we get closer and closer to Selection Sunday, about 53 hours away from the official bracket reveal on CBS Sunday evening. I say afternoon because I'm a West Coaster and that's when it is out here. But folks, the storyline for the last couple of weeks, and it feels like we talk about this every single year, but there is some data. The great Evan Miyakawa on his website, evanmiya.com, pulled some data to basically indicate that this year's bubble compared to the rest of the field is as weak as pretty much any bubble has been in the history of college basketball in the 68, 64 team era. So we kind of knew that. Again, we're looking at teams, and some of the teams that are in this conversation are multiple games below 500 in conference play. Like, we just have not seen teams. And over the last stretch, I mean, Auburn struggled down the stretch. Indiana lost early in the conference tournament. Cincinnati blew an 8-point lead with 3 minutes to go against Central Florida. Like, so many of these teams have Stanford and Cal were teams that were kind of periphery of the bubble and then decided to really shoot themselves in the foot by losing early in the conference tournament.
Cheddar Bob.
Yes. Yeah. It's just
my 8 Mile reference for the day.
Yes. I love it. Right now, Bracket Matrix has the 10 seeds being Texas A&M, Central Florida, NC State, and Miami, Ohio. And then the 11 seeds, they list 6 of them because it's just, again, an aggregate of all these brackets, would be Missouri.
Well, and because that's where the Dayton games would be. That's part of why they do the 6.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Right. So they have Missouri, Santa Clara, Texas, SMU, VCU, and South Florida. South Florida is intriguing to me because they are going to play tomorrow against the winner of, I think it's Charlotte UAB in the American Conference Tournament. The main reason I'm curious is if South Florida would be a potential bid thief situation if they were to lose and somebody else were to win the American Conference or not. I personally, if, like, let's say Tulsa upset South Florida, I would love to see both of those teams make the tournament because I think they're both probably better than some of these teams that are in that mix right now. But JJ, I want to start with you because I know you have a connection with Auburn, obviously a program that's been in the news a ton for Bruce Pearl's comments about Miami, Ohio, which we talked about on a squad show a few weeks ago. And now, of course, with Miami, Ohio and Auburn both losing on the same day, Auburn probably, I mean, I'll let you talk about what you think. But for me, if they had been able to hold on to that 10-point lead against Tennessee, maybe we're having a different conversation. But the fact that they blew that game makes me feel like, I mean, it's got to be just about curtains for them.
Yeah, it really felt like when that first half was playing out in the start of the second, you see Tahad Pettiford getting a rhythm and in a zone. It's like, this is the reason he came back. He's the only member from the Final Four squad a year ago. But again, Auburn was the number 1 overall seed in last year's tournament, not Florida, who won the thing, not Duke, not Houston of the 1 seeds. So to have fallen off this far after Bruce Pearl retires and his son takes over the program, it's just crazy to end up in this position. But you said it, Andy. I mean, in the month of February, to lose 6 of your 7 games there, you're 2-2 so far in the 4 games that you've played in March. I mean, this just has not been good basketball. And with 16 losses, I think if I saw this correctly, guys, I don't know that there's been teams with more than 15.
So
right?
Here, let me give you the number. No team has ever been selected as an at-large, I should say. Obviously there have been some automatic qualifiers made. No at-large has ever been selected with 16 losses. Here's another one that I just found on Friday morning. No team has ever been selected without being multiple games above 500. Auburn obviously right now is 17 and 16. And so that, like, both of those things alone are like killers.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know how you make the case for Auburn to make the field. They'll tell you about the strength of schedule and where it's at, right? But at some point, winning these games matters. And when people see you play on the floor and not walking off with your head held high from winning, and you just kind of look at the makeup, and it just seems like there's got to be some infighting within that Auburn locker room and team and everything.
Better than on a plane. Better than on a plane, JJ.
Well, you say that, Isaac, and the plane ended up going to a Final Four. So maybe
and they went down and beat Houston after that.
Yeah, maybe they just need to run it back and start throwing hands on a plane.
As you look at their KenPom page, it's just so. And I know the committee doesn't look at most recent 10 games anymore. Like, that's not a thing. But they've lost 9 of their last 12 games, right? Like, the humanity of that is like, good grief. Something that I've really, people I feel like often talk about, like, how have you done in quad 1 and 2 combined? Rocco Miller, I really like that he looks at kind of a combination of meaningful games and calls it quads 1, 2, and 3 in aggregate. And basically his idea is, if you are not above 500 in the first 3 quads combined, you have no business dancing. Notably, Kevin Sweeney from Sports Illustrated put this up. Auburn is 11 and 15 in quads 1 through 3 combined.
There you go.
Texas 10 and 14, Indiana 11 and 14, Cincinnati 11 and 14, Oklahoma 11 and 14, and Virginia Tech 12 and 13. And so it's just like all of these like you take out the quad 4 games and you're 4 games below 500 in the first 3 quadrants. That's insanity.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you guys on that. Obviously, the Auburn of it all. It's what's funny to me about this year with the bubble is we have 2 very unique teams. I know there's more bubble teams than Auburn and Miami, Ohio. Like, obviously they're not the only 2, but Auburn's resume is very unique. Obviously, the fact that they're even in this conversation as a 16-loss team is strange, but it's because they had a ridiculously hard non-conference schedule, and their win quality is good. They have too many losses. I think that's at this point kind of overwhelmingly true and hard to reckon with. But their resume, like, the reason that there's a 16-loss team in this conversation is A, because the bubble's very weak otherwise, but B, because Auburn is not your typical 16-loss team. This is an unusual circumstance. The Miami, Ohio conversation, a lot of people kind of like to make it out to be like this happens regularly. Oh, there's always these mediocre mid-major teams that win almost all their games. And like, no, this is very rare. Like the last time a team went into the conference tournament undefeated was Gonzaga in 2021. Before that, I think it was Wichita State. Like, and for Miami, Ohio to lose in their first loss of the season being in the conference tournament, that's the first time this has happened since 1975. Like, this is a very unusual circumstance. The fact that they have the second worst strength of schedule in college basketball is also very unusual. Like, the reason that people are having a hard time figuring out how to talk about
you could
Miami,
say that
Ohio,
again, Andy, for people to sit on that for a moment. The second worst.
The second worst schedule in college basketball.
Per KenPom, Andy, what
it's a non-conference strength of schedule. Yeah, I believe it is from KenPom. And that's what's so unique about this team is they are the extremes. Like, not only that, like, not only do they have this almost spotless record and a really weak schedule, they have come very close to losing a lot of times. Their margin of victory is pretty slim. They are a team that found a way to win every single game until they lost to UMass, which is incredible, extraordinary, should be rewarded. I have no doubt. I am not making an argument against Miami, Ohio. I think they should clearly be in the field, but it is unique. It is unique to have a team that somehow just scrapes by the skin of their teeth. Like a 7-point swing for Miami, Ohio this year is 3 more losses, and we're not even there's Stephen F. Austin, who lost in their conference tournament at 28-3, and nobody's having that conversation about Stephen F. Austin, nor should they. I would love to see 28 win mid-major teams make the tournament, but reasonably, I'm not going to make that argument for that team. But Miami, Ohio didn't lose those 3 games. You know what I mean? Like they found ways to win in overtime, and now they're in this conversation. It's very fascinating to me. I think they'll get in, and I think that they might lose their first game, whether it's a play-in game, whether it's a 7-10. And I think that that'll start the discourse of, well, they didn't belong. And I hate that because I think that a team that goes 31-1 deserves their chance, even if they lose. Even it doesn't matter. There's going to be a top 5 seed that loses. You know, a 5 seed is going to lose to a 12 seed this year. That doesn't mean that 5 seed didn't deserve to make it. Sometimes you just lose. But I think Miami, Ohio deserves a chance.
Andy, I've got good news for you, and then I'll go to these other guys. Miami, Ohio has risen in Ken Palm non-con strength of schedule all the way from 364 all the way up to 361. So we're looking up.
There we go.
Only the 5th worst non-conference strength of schedule.
You guys don't think there's one of these 7 seeds at Kentucky, Miami, St. Mary's, Villanova that Miami of Ohio could beat?
I think they could. I think they absolutely could.
Absolutely.
I think Kentucky is a very volatile team. Like I could see Kentucky beating Miami, Ohio by 20. Like I truly could see that, and it would be devastating, but I could see that happening. I could also see Kentucky having an off night. Miami, Ohio, who's a good shooting team. They're also very volatile, which is what makes it unique. First of all, as somebody who follows this team very closely, sign me up for St. Mary's, Miami, Ohio. That would be a fascinating game of basketball. 2 really good 3-point shooting teams. St. Mary's elite defensively, Miami, Ohio, high-level offense. That would be a bar. I hate when mid-major teams get squared off in the first round, so part of me wouldn't like it. But at the same time, like that would be a really fun game.
Well, and I think to Nick's question, I'll phrase it this way. This is the only thing that pops into my mind. Jack Golke's not a thing until Jack Golke's a thing.
Right.
You just never know on any given day who's going to be that dude or that team that just steps up and goes bonkers. Like that guy, Jack Golke came off the bench for that team, for crying out loud, right? And so yeah, absolutely, any of those teams could do it. But I like Andy's point about the volatility of it all that factors into it.
Wanted to talk about some bid thief situations that we might see here to kind of close out the show. As we're recording this right now, some of these games are getting close to tipping off, but always every year there's usually at least 1 or 2 teams that win their conference tournament that are not expected to, and they don't knock somebody from their conference out of the tournament, so they end up being a thief in the sense that they take a bid from one of these bubble teams. Since we don't like very many of the bubble teams, I think we're kind of rooting for there to be some bid thieves. I also like chaos, so I think it'd be very fun if we saw that. The 2 power conferences that have potential bid thieves, since every Big Ten team that's still left, every ACC team and Big 12 team that's still left, they're all going to make it regardless of what happens. But Seton Hall, they're kind of a borderline bubble team. So I don't know if you count them as a bid thief if they won the SEC, or excuse me, the Big East tournament. Georgetown is not.
Georgetown.
Yeah. Georgetown is not a bubble team by any stretch, but if somehow Ed Cooley just goes on continues an incredible run, beats UConn and beats St. John's or Seton Hall, that would be a bid thief and a very, very funny one. In the SEC, I don't think Oklahoma's going to make it if they don't win the SEC tournament, so they would be a bid thief. Ole Miss certainly would not make it unless they won the SEC. That would be funny as well. So curious if that happens. And then in the Mountain West, Nevada is still in the mix. They could potentially be a bid thief. Whoever wins the MAC is going to be a bid thief because we assume Miami, Ohio will make it. South Florida, potentially. Curious to see if that happens in the American. But do any of you guys especially with those power conference teams, with Seton Hall, Georgetown, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, anybody feel like there might be a chance that one of those teams wins their conference tournament and makes things a little interesting in March?
I just don't. I mean,
yeah, I don't.
I'd love to do it, but I just feel like the teams that are projected to kind of win these conferences are where they need to be, and there's enough separation from the top of those leagues down towards the bottom to potential bid thieves. I don't see it.
Ohio State is up on Michigan now, by the way. I did want to throw that out there. They're up by 1 point.
Oh, they are. Yeah.
Do it, the line. Also, while we're in that mode, St. Louis did come back and win. Largest comeback in program history for the Billikens.
Nice.
They were down 21 in the first half. 28th win this season, ties the school record. Great for Josh Schertz, who just got a big deserved extension. I'm really shocked. I thought he might move on, but I love that loyalty to the Billikens. By the way, St. Louis, just a couple hours down the road. I'm going to need to get up there next year and see the Billikens in action.
Yeah, I'm glad Arvin mentioned the Ohio State game because I'm keeping a close eye on that. Again, I don't think it's a bid thief necessarily. I think Ohio State's already in, but man, oh man, that would be interesting. And JJ might make you feel a little bit better about getting that number 1 overall seed if Michigan goes down, especially if we think Iowa State might beat Arizona later today, which is something I think is probably going to happen. In terms of the bid thieves, Seton Hall is the only team I think that could do it. I could see Shaheen Holloway's team somehow finding a way to upset St. John's and UConn. But again, I think if they even beat St. John's, they're probably going to be in the field as a bubble team. So by that point, it may not matter. But yeah, unfortunate that there's not a lot of bid thieves this year because the bubble's just not in particularly good shape as we're here about 54 hours away. I can do math from Selection Sunday.
Hey, look, don't forget Arizona, though. Like, if Duke should fall, if Michigan should fall here, like, Arizona, I'm just going to continue to say, for my money, the most complete team in the nation. Obviously, the three-pointers might come into effect, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if we wind up seeing them as the number 1 overall team.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Squad Show your first listener watch of the day. This will be the final piece of content from Isaac and I before Selection Sunday, where we'll be together in Dallas, Texas for the bracket breakdown brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. So excited to have that going once again. Excited to get a look at what this bracket looks like and how it shakes out, all this fun stuff. Huge thank you to JJ and Nick for jumping on today as well. Folks, as always, especially with Arvin here, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to the McBruins. And until next time, folks, peace out.